I am the director of product covering the ops section here at GitLab. We're here for the ops section group conversation. I have prepared some slides that are in the agenda. If I do a quick overview, I called out an overview slide, just some call outs. First one that I'm really excited about is dog fooding. We've had a lot of movement on dog fooding, really frankly, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, including having OKRs for a number of the critical teams and some strong collaboration within the individual teams on MVCs and first iterations. Another call out that we are actually short 4 engineering manager vacancies at the moment. So we have a number of engineering managers doing double duty across multiple teams. So thank you to them, but also call out if you know engineering managers who are looking for positions at GitLab, please send them Sam's way. We have started doing product walkthroughs. This was a product OKR and I found it really successful, and I've been doing a number and consuming a number. They're really good experiences for product managers to perform the walkthroughs, but I also think it helps share within the broader team what the set of features are within our section. So check those out. I have a link to the YouTube playlist that you can watch. And then lastly, we, at the start of this year, started preparing, and last week, and we have 2 tomorrow, have a series of analyst briefings where we're briefing them on the features and capabilities of our ops section. And it's been really great to do that for the first time. We're starting to get feedback and iterating on our analyst briefing content. So I highlighted a couple of things that I'm excited about that are coming up in terms of product feature development. But with that, I will jump to questions. And Brandon, you had the first one that's already has some back and forth. Why don't you vocalize?
Yeah, perfect. So always been a big fan of us tackling serverless early on, but making just some observations is for us, serverless is tightly coupled really to Knative and Kubernetes. Wondering, when we talk to a bunch of customers in particular, and added a link here, if they're using AWS, they're going to associate Lambda and serverless as being kind of one and the same. I'm just wondering how y'all are thinking about those as 2 different platforms, and whether we think of those, if you guys are thinking serverless as a use case for similar to as a use case or specifically a platform, and just curious kind of where you all are thinking on that, and added some more context in here.
Yeah, Sam and Victor, do you guys want to respond? Sam?
Yeah, I guess can verbalize my comment. I was in my prior position, I've been here a month. I was doing a lot of stuff with AWS serverless. I've done a lot of research on it, have a pretty significant amount of experience with it. And you know, my favorite definition for serverless, just kind of industry definition, is the one RedMonk came up with, which is managed services that scale to 0. That if you have a kind of managed cloud service with a utility billing model, so Lambda would be a good example of that, scales to 0, scales up to high levels. And you know, that really what that trend and approach about is taking those types of services, being able to integrate them in ways, add your business logic, and then as a result, you know, build applications more fast or more quickly, have them be more scalable. And so, you know, Lambda is a component of that, but I really think where, you know, AWS has traction is around, they have the most kind of mature ecosystem of services that you can combine to make those applications. And that's why you see the most mature examples of serverless architecture in that ecosystem today. What I expect to see is, you know, that trend continue, and more application developers using an auth service and a compute service and an API service, as opposed to building services on top of servers. I think it's still early for serverless, so I think a lot of the use cases, you know, in reality are pretty immature today. But that's how I tend to think about it.
Okay. Do you think we could just maybe drilling in? So I think that's broad definition, like the broad definition, but maybe being very specific to the code piece. I'm seeing the most places that people are kind of coming, particularly on Lambda, is very much an if this then that kind of process. My concern on that is just with the way we're tackling this is just for context, if this then that requires an event stream, which means it's probably gonna have to run on a big public cloud, because you've got to have a great event stream, a la in this case with AWS, they leverage CloudWatch. Is that anything that we're kind of looking at? Is that, I mean, we're doing monitoring, and then we have, you know, an event stream and a CloudWatch. So I'm just wondering, are you guys thinking about how these two come together? If so, any place we've written it down, or is it just early on and that's completely fine too?
Let me try to answer this part. I think it's more for me than for some. So I just agree with you about how you see serverless. So the only thing I can tell you right now is that basically, as far as I understand, I wasn't at GitLab when all this project started, but the reason why we want Knative is because of its cloud native approach, and we went to the breadth over that approach. That clearly, there was. We didn't want it to support AWS. We didn't want it to support a specific provider. We wanted it to be cloud native in terms of serverless. At the same time, as I told, we totally agree with you. Lambda basically means serverless today. That's the case. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, eventing doesn't even develop so fast on top of Knative than the basic Knative serving part actually develops. So it's even much harder for us to support that. And right now we don't have short-term plans for that to support the much event-driven flow, but it's on our radar and it's planned for the future maturity categories in serverless.
Perfect. Thanks, all.
Sid, I think you have the next question.
Yeah, thanks. If we have a status page on the op server, and I love that we're trying to dog food this, but I think the op server right now is not on the internet. And if the site is down, that's our most crucial point. So I think the infrastructure team might not be jumping with joy to have that as a status page that might be hit. What are the thoughts around that?
Sarah, you want to say? I know, so I think that was brought up. That question was mentioned a couple times in the MVC issue that I saw, which I don't know if that is the exact link. And then they had a kickoff this week that included the infrastructure team. Sarah or Nicholas, or sorry, Sarah or Matt or Clement. I think you were part of that discussion.
Yeah, I'll just voice Sam's comment that you guys can see in the doc. So we're looking at putting it, potentially publishing it to an external CDN to host that page to avoid exactly what you just said, Sid. I don't know if the MVC, the 1 month version, is going to host separately, but the long term or even medium term goal is to not have them hosted in the same place, as if the op server goes down, we have no way to update people. Does anyone, Sam, Clement, Matt, want to add more color to that?
By the way, that makes sense. That, like, if you're going to publish a page to a CDN, that seems to resolve everything. Thanks. I have the next one too. I love the dog fooding of error tracking. Can we elaborate a bit on what we're doing today? Are we using Sentry directly? Is that what we're trying to replace?
Yeah, we're using Sentry directly, which actually makes it a fairly somewhat streamlined process for us to move into GitLab, because teams can do that on different cadences. And at any point, if we run into serious blockers, which is the whole point of dog fooding, we don't break up that workflow. They can continue to use Sentry for error tracking. So we're just obviating, we're just moving everything into GitLab.
Awesome, thanks. Mark?
Yeah, just my obligatory bug report. The graphs on just slides 7 and 8 show dips. Dips always means there's a bug in categories.yaml somewhere. Specifically, Chaos Engineering says it's supposed to be minimal by the end of last quarter. But as of today, it's not. I'm not sure where it's at, but that just needs to be fixed. And then same thing for logging on slide 8. I think it was supposed to go to viable by the end of the quarter, and it still says it's minimal.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. I was making some adjustments last night, and the presentation an hour ago had a warning, this is currently trying to be fixed, and I tried to fix it, but yeah, it still had that dip. I'm interested in learning from you how you diagnosed that so quickly, because I was struggling to figure out which category it was that was missing, but I'll take that offline with you. Thank you.
All right, cool.
Mark, you had the next one.
It's rearranged. What has changed in the maturity chart since the last presentation? I see Sarah's already answered there. Error tracking got pushed out a month. Serverless was pushed out a month. Anything else? Anything that did upgrade a maturity in the last 5 weeks or whatever it is?
I don't think there were any maturity increments. Logging also got pushed out, as did the two MVCs for cluster cost optimization and chaos engineering. They were
And Auto DevOps did move to viable.
Oh,
actually,
thank you, Daniel.
With the introduction of selective triggering of pipelines based on your project's contents.
Awesome. That's cool. Thanks. Sid?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, great presentation. I love all the detail. This is a great presentation to it's visual. It has ton of screenshots, a ton of links. It's a lot of fun. I wonder what the red line is on slide 24. Maybe we don't know. That's fine. We can move on. But it didn't seem to be month-over-month growth because it's a bit too steady for that.
Agreed. Yeah, I do not know. If I look now that I'm looking closely, I bet it is month-over-month growth, but the range is horrible. The range should be between 1 and 0, and instead it's 100 and something to minus 100.
The offset is, and then scaled down. Okay, makes sense. Thanks. And then slide 25. Can someone talk us through that? Does this mean like for monitoring we have less than 2,000 users? Even some other parts of the product have like millions. Most other parts of the product have millions of users. Yeah,
this is .com. First of all, this is just the activity dashboard from .com, and I should have put that in the header. It's from Snowplow data. Yeah, I think that is true. You can see the events, and I can give you some color on the events names, but they're fairly self-explanatory. The one that we use more often for self-managed instances is number of Prometheus installs. And I just saw a different dashboard in that telemetry note. There's a link to us moving to the AMAU. And on the actions per stage, I saw the number for monitor Prometheus installs is 6,672. It's still very low compared to all the other stage usage.
Yeah, are we installing Prometheus by default, or are these the Prometheus not for self-monitoring, but the ones in?
Correct. Yeah, it's for installing it on an attached cluster, an application cluster, not the omnibus install.
Yeah, so we're kind of 2 orders of magnitude, maybe 3 orders of magnitude of like many of our other stages. So I think that tells us that dogfooding should be priority 1, 2, and 3 in order to make it something that people don't immediately like if we dogfood it, we know that at least there is a use case for it that's well supported, and then it tends to grow from there. So I'm glad to see the focus on dogfooding, for example, with error tracking, which I don't think I ever asked for, but that is now happening, and that's really encouraging.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. We are every PM in this section will tell you kind of constantly looking for users, and dogfooding is a place where we can immediately get that feedback loop started. So they have been independently prioritizing those efforts. So,
do we have any users that we talk to? Like, hey, I know of a company that I can't name right now, but it's a paying client, and they're all in on GitLab monitoring, and they're using it for everything. Do we have we heard stories like that?
I've not. I spoke to a customer last week who wants to be. They're all in on other portions. They use our Kubernetes management, but the monitoring tools are not where they would like them to be, so they're not using them.
I'm also piloting setting up a special interest group. I'm specifically doing it for incident management to work on the triage flow. And we're targeting smaller organizations where we are most likely to find developers who also wear the operations hat. And we're in the early stages of setting that up. But the goal after I've collected this group of people is 3 to 5 individuals that meet monthly that I can asynchronously ping on issues, and that we can handhold through setting up monitoring in their own instances to help alleviate the lack of users that we have to talk to. So once I go through that, I can make public my process.
Cool, thanks for that. Great idea. Next question as well. GitLab managed apps to the CI. Will that replace existing kind of managed apps? Is that the goal, that everything becomes a CI managed app?
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Daniel.
so yeah, thanks, Kenny. So yes, this is the goal, is that basically once we have all the pieces that we need in place, it will replace the current model where the Rails backend has every hard-coded instruction into your Kubernetes cluster. Now, the experience in the front end will largely be the same. It's just that when you click install on one of those buttons, in the background, a CI process will be triggered. Yeah, so it's thanks for that feedback. It's probably worth making that clearer in the epic if you didn't get it from it. So I'll make sure that that's updated. So the legacy model will eventually go away. That's the plan.
Great. My suggestion would be, instead of calling it the legacy model, call it the non-CI model, which is much clearer, because we'll have more legacy. We'll move to V3, Fair. And then it's unclear what is legacy, and legacy, and legacy.
All right. Thanks, Sid.
Cool. Thanks, Mark.
Can I, before we move on to that one, I just want to highlight Daniel and team. I put it on one of my highlights at the top of these slides, but I'm really excited about that model. There's another really important thing that it provides, which is that kind of feedback of when something goes wrong. Today, we were always having trouble surfacing errors appropriately, and developers who might install an application wouldn't really know what happened when it failed or if it was successful. And now you can point them directly to, hey, here's the, like the log trail of when this CI job ran, and you can kind of troubleshoot exactly what happened. So I think it's a really awesome iteration.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting too. Like, obviously GitLab CI is also GitLab CD, and we're using our own CD to deploy applications. And I think that's great.
That's a good point. Don't call them CI based, they're CD based.
No. Let's keep it simple.
All right. So on Medic's point, just to shout out, love the walkthrough videos. Definitely keep them coming. Haven't seen all of them, but anybody else who hasn't watched them, I really highly recommend looking at them.
Yeah, thanks. And I put that as a highlight too, because I do think there's a lot of, like Sid mentioned and the product managers are mentioning, we don't see a lot of usage of these features, but it's important that we keep everyone informed about how far we've come. And there's been a lot of movement just in the last 6 months in terms of improving the product here. And so the walkthroughs are a good way of keeping up to speed about what the current state of our ops section capabilities are.
Yeah, exactly. And I could imagine, if you're in sales or any other kind of customer facing thing, it's hard to keep track of every single release post item going on. So these are a great way to get up to date. Brandon?
Perfect. Yeah, I just love for you guys to elaborate a little more of what excites you about the Terraform IAC that you guys, infrastructure as code piece you're talking on 27. Link is great, Victor. I'm just curious how you all see that coming together. We see a lot of customers using it, which is always a lot of Terraform being used, and with GitLab, but maybe there's more things to it. Just, I'd be great to have you guys articulate why you find it exciting and what areas you see those kind of dovetailing. Would be curious.
Hey, Brandon, you had some YOLs and you had some you guys, so let's try to do YOLs. I know how hard it is.
Thank you, y'all. If you could, y'all could give us an explanation on that, would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. You should learn a language that doesn't use sexes, and then it would be great. Like Hungarian. So
yes, let's start the language war. It's gonna be great.
I'll have to do y'all. I'm sorry. Right now I'm sticking y'all. I'm gonna start with y'all, and we can move forward from there.
Okay. So yeah, what excites us are many things here. One is that we see a lot of interest from our users, customers around Terraform. For this reason, personally, I expect to be able to gross hit numbers as we have these features. We might be able actually these features might be a tiebreaker in some situations. So from business perspective, I think these are really great. And we see quite a lot of additional features that might even at not the first step, but I would say second or third MVC steps could provide features that make it much more lovable in general for ops use cases. These are really for the infrastructure management part. I don't know if you're interested about the specific features I'm speaking about or just what I said. I'm happy to get into more detail as well.
If someone else has a question, by all means jump in. But if I'm last one or we haven't gotten and Sid
Well,
can't type fast enough, you know.
I would ask Victor, one of the things that excites me personally is that in your problem validation, you uncovered some like very specific pain points to managing infrastructure as code with Terraform that we can, given both our kind of essentialness to the CI process today, can really go tackle well. Maybe you can just highlight the MR review process.
MR one, I will tell you how we do MR reviews of Terraform plans at GitLab. Basically, you change the Terraform plan, push to your branch, CI/CD job starts, and in your job log, you get the plan output dumped out. Then the person who has to review those changes actually has to open the job log. They copy paste the line either into Slack or to the merge request, and then start commenting on it there. So it's a really nightmare-like setup. And this is at GitLab, but even other customers or users of Terraform actually told almost the same story. So one thing that we can do here is that similarly how we just simply do the documentation linting, we are actually going to push back a formatted Terraform plan output into the merge request. Pretty minor development from our side that already seems to be a huge hub for all these people using Terraform today. This is one of the things that excites us.
Sid, I think you're up.
Yeah, so slide 33 has the highlight of the community contributions status, or from the wider community contributions. Thanks for doing that. Even better, like we have contributions from the wider community to monitoring, even though our usage is low. Actually have more than I would expect based on kind of the usage numbers we're seeing. So what's happening there? Are people just excited because it's new? They're not really using it yet, but they just want to contribute? Or are people using it and it's so broken that there's a lot of greenfield? Or are our usage numbers wrong? We just have a ton more users than we thought. What's any insight on kind of how these contributions came together?
Yeah, and Sarah, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. Sid, you are anything if not predictable. You asked the same question in our group conversation in December, and I know we did some follow-up with the specific community contributors to ask them why they did. Sarah, I don't know if you have that available off the top of your head, but I know you were kind of leading that effort to reach out to the community contributors who had been making ones from our last GC.
Yeah, so we have not finished that particular issue you're referring to, Kenny, but we've seen an uptick in community contributions because we've had 2 or 3 contributors who did a kind of broad communication across different stages and groups at GitLab, hoping that something would stick. And we snatched up 2 or 3 of them, and I've had a couple one-on-one calls with them and helped them create a little backlog of things that actually contribute to the direction of monitor, and then made sure that they have constant communication and feedback, and members of our team are available to help them contribute to the monitor stage. So I would say it's active involvement and participation from the whole team, engineers, engineering managers. And it's a few key, I can go find their names, but a few key contributors are doing a lot of that work.
Yeah, and if I recall in Slack, I think I saw that some of those were, hey, I'm interested in getting a job at GitLab, so I'm going to do some community contributions.
One of them is yes, and he has made it very public his desire to work here and his MR goals.
We'll take it. That's great.
That's awesome. It's really exciting to see that something that is so we're putting a lot more effort behind this than we've ever done on anything else before. Like when it had relative to the usage, we have a lot more people on this, and it's great to see that there's still space for the wider community to contribute. So Sarah, thanks for encouraging that and helping those people. That's really awesome.
All right, I think we're at time. Call out to slide number 34. Today is World Cancer Day. consider following the Take Action link and watching the videos that I referenced. Thanks, everybody.